You are listening to Severin Sorensen, Executive Coach and Curator of the Arete Coach Podcast, where we explore excellence and the art and science of executive coaching. Today's guest is Norma Rosenberg. She is an executive coach, a Vistage Chair, and her practice is in Manhattan. Norma is insightful, sage, and perceptive. She came to coaching after a career of management consulting with PricewaterhouseCoopers. This particular interview was recorded on November 16, 2020 on Zoom. Now, what's interesting about Norma is that she took a path through management consulting, having worked with one of the major four firms, and then graduated her way into coaching, moving from highly analytical, tool-based to more feeling, perception, and intuitive-based. And today she would describe her number one strength being intuition and her ability to empathize. During our interview, Norma shared with me an epiphany she had recently in looking at a space launch and thinking about the stages of flight as a metaphor for the different stages that we go through.
Last night, I was on the treadmill in our fitness center in my building, and I was watching the space launch, it was thrilling. It was 10 minutes, and you saw the first part,
breakaway,
the breakaway, and come back to Earth. And I was thinking that that's a little bit about life, about how we have things that help us soar, and we don't need those anymore. We just go on to something new, and the foundation, is still in our memory, but we don't need that. You know what I mean? It's just
that's a beautiful metaphor.
To Earth, yeah. There's a lot of beautiful metaphors right now. If we can put aside all of the awful things that are going on, there's some beautiful things about this time.
I thought interviewing Norma today would be great because I find her to be intensely insightful. She's got great perspective, wonderful sense of humor, and she comes to coaching with such an interesting background. Years of management consulting with PricewaterhouseCoopers and so on. On Norma's LinkedIn page, she posts the headline, "I'm helping CEOs make bold moves in an economic downturn." That certainly sounds like something most relevant today. So as we begin this session, I want to share that Norma is warm, she's curious-minded, an active listener, an innovator in the executive coaching field who is pushing the limits of what coaching can be, particularly in our stay-at-home world. Since the COVID pandemic hit, Norma has pivoted her own coaching practice to add tiger teams, weekly check-in sessions, mind share boosters, attracting top talent to encourage and support her coaching clients, even going to weekly meetings where she used to do monthly meetings to add value in these times. I thought speaking with Norma would be a great addition to our podcast, where we seek to explore excellence and the art and science of executive coaching today. Welcome, Norma. How are you doing?
Thank you. I'm doing great today, Severin. It's good to be here with you.
Oh, I'm excited to have the conversation that we can have. To get us started, I wanted to understand a little bit more about your coaching career. I understand that you have been in this field for some 45 years. Can you tell me how your feet came to take you into this field?
Sure. It was a little bit serendipitous. It evolved. I was working in the public sector and for the first 16 years, and I got them to send me to Columbia's Executive MBA program. And that got me thinking about shifting to the private sector, because I was in a class of public and private sector people. And so I did that in 1980. I went to Coopers and Lybrand, which became PwC. And that turned out to be a great change for me. I found in the public sector, they would work with what they had and the people that they had and build their organizations around the idiosyncrasies of the people. Whereas in the private sector, they were more about making gigantic shifts and getting rid of these people and getting those people. And I had to get used to that and bring my own brand to the table.
can you share with us any focus you might have in terms of the major industry or any way that your practice has changed over time?
Sure. Well, when I was at PwC, what became PwC, I did a lot of work in banking. I worked with all the major banks in the city, New York City, and did some work in utilities like Con Ed, New York Telephone, which became Verizon, and a little bit of work in manufacturing. And so there were a lot of changes then, lots of downsizing in the 80s. We had that recession, and the firms that I worked with got rid of, everywhere I went, like 15-20% of the people, and started some new practices and new ventures.
I understand you've been a Vistage Chair for some 22 years. Can you tell me about Vistage and your practice there?
Sure. So as I was coming on 20 years at PwC, I had found the working with the Fortune 500 company CEOs very intellectually stimulating, but not so emotionally rewarding, because I'd work with someone who was leading hundreds of thousands of people, and even they can't turn the ship around. So we'd work on something and it would be fascinating, but then they couldn't do anything about it. So I said to myself, in my next life, which is now, I'm going to be working with leaders of small to mid-sized companies, like the $5 million to the $300 million revenue range. And that's what I'm doing. And it's just the way I thought. It's much more emotionally rewarding than working with the large corporations.
I understand that you have a unique practice with many, what we'll call entertainment industry companies. How's that, and how have they been impacted at this time?
Everybody's been impacted in one way or another, but some of them have managed to shift in a way that even is resulting in them growing the business. And we've done a lot of work around that to reimagine what people are going to need in the future. It's, and that future is shorter now than ever. We're looking at 6 months, not, in the 1980s, we were looking at 5-10 years strategic planning, but we don't do that anymore. So it's a very short horizon, and it's what are people going to be needing in 2021? And it's just changing. Zoom has changed everything. It's changed our concept of time. It's something different now, and it's moving so damn fast that we better be sharp to be on top of it.
I agree. You have excelled in a field that started off being very male-dominated. Can you tell me about how you were able to break the glass ceiling in your own field, and how you've become a leader in this field?
Sure. So in the 1980s, when I was at one of the big four, or what became the big four, I was the only woman in the room. There were no female partners in New York in consulting. So I had to learn how to survive in that world. And so if I did a study of a whole Fortune 500 company division or company or whatever, it did not work for a small woman to be walking into the CEO's office and saying, this is what we're going to do. This is what you should do. That didn't work. So I learned that what I had to do was, first of all, play down my intelligence and ask them questions. And I would say, well, what do you think your choices are for the future? And I had studied the whole thing and what would work and what wouldn't work. So they would say something. And if I thought it was going to bomb, I would say, well, if you did that, that would work if the competition would stay in place for the next 6 years. So what's your next choice? And they would go on to something else. And as soon as they hit on something that I knew would work, I would say, that's a brilliant idea. And
Are you leading the witness?
I was leading the witness. And so, it was called consulting officially, but I didn't realize at the time that was coaching. And that's how I came into coaching. As a woman in a man's world and the only woman in the room, I had to lead by questions and let them discover their own answers.
What are some powerful questions that you have asked in the past that have made a big difference in people's lives?
Well, one of the main ones is, what do you think your choices are? But there are lots after that. Well, first of all, I always get to know every person that I'm coaching as an individual. So I'm working with them to fulfill some kind of goals that they have, and that varies. So while they're always trying to grow the business, they're also trying to do something that they believe in personally, or that they're going to get rewarded for. So I'll ask them to share their goals with me. And then if we can find a match between their own goals and what they're passionate about and where the company is going, that's what we're going to work on. So I'm going to ask them questions about, what they feel passionate about, what they have the energy to work on for a year or two until it's done. So when you have that match, it's nirvana.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Thinking about your practice today, can you describe your practice? What types of activities are you currently doing? Just describe for our listeners what your coaching practice looks like today.
Well, it's a blend of, it's mostly for-profit, but about 25-30% of my clients are not-for-profit. And that always brings more to the table because they have a different focus, the not-for-profit leaders. So can I give you an example?
Yes.
This is a real conversation that took place about 15 years ago, and it taught all of us a lot. So I had a guy that was running a public relations company with a little bit of association management, trade associate, all kinds of associations. And the company he was running was in New York, and he had the opportunity to buy a company in Atlanta that was much bigger than his and would have quadrupled the size of his overall business. So he brought this to the table. And I always have some financial geniuses in the group that I run because I'm not a financial genius, and we need that. And so the men in the room always pounce on the finances, and they start projecting the numbers out, 3-5 years from now. Somebody in that room jumped up to the whiteboard and did a whole lot of numbers. And I let that go on for about 45 minutes. Meanwhile, I had in that group Ruth Abram, who was the founder of the Tenement Museum in Manhattan. And she was very quiet. She had a black binder and she was taking notes. And she said nothing for that 45 minutes. And then when there was a little silence in the room, you told us 2 weeks ago that your personal goal is to spend more time traveling with your wife, coach your son's soccer team, and get closer to your teenage son. How is it that going to Atlanta 3 days a week to run a business that you're going to acquire and grow the company, how is it that that's going to jive with your personal goals? And there was this dead silence in the room, and everybody's thinking, why didn't I think of that? Ruth thought of that. She's from the not-for-profit. So I always have a mix of people who are, first of all, human beings, and secondly, in the business world. And so you have people that can put it all together when you have a group of different people. And Ruth was the one that got Peter to think about getting his number 2 person to go to Atlanta 3 days a week so that he could keep his marriage and his family life intact and get closer to his kids. And, today, this is now like 35, 40 years later, the teenage son then, he's running the Washington office. The marriage stayed intact. So it all worked out because Ruth sat there and got him to think about his personal goals together with his business goals. Works like that.
When you decided that you intentionally wanted to become a coach, what did you do, or did you feel you needed to do to be an effective coach?
I needed to listen and ask questions more. I've never had formal coaching training, even though I've been coaching for 40 some years now. I learned from experience that if I would quiet down and put myself in the other person's shoes and meet the person exactly where they're at, because everybody is different. I don't get my coaching skills from a book or a curriculum. It's from feeling what's going on with the person I'm working with, or feeling what's going on in the room if I have a group of 12 or 14 people around the table or on the Zoom. I can do it on Zoom also. So I'm looking for clues to see where the person with the issue or the topic is at and who else wants to say something. And that's more important to me than what I've read in a book or taken in a course.
What is your why? And do you have a why that gives you purpose or cause or a belief that drives and gives you energy?
I absolutely love helping someone get to where they want to be. As long as it's not something harmful or illegal, they give me their goals. And if I can help them get there, I'm thrilled. That's enough for me.
Here's a question we sometimes ask in other situations to get to know people. What is the animal that best describes your superpower as a coach?
Okay, this is going to sound a little funny, but I'll explain. It's the turtle. And not because the turtle moves slowly. It's because the turtle, the head, when the turtle's head may be out or it may be in, the turtle's head goes inside. And I feel that when I'm talking with someone, I can go inside myself without physically showing that. I can go inside myself and what I've learned to pull out things if I'm quieting down and listening for it, like the turtle. And when I come out, I've got more insight.
Wonderful. Here's a question I enjoy asking because I think it brings up the great spirits of the why we do this. Can you describe for me your best day ever as an executive coach? Where were you? What were you doing? And what was happening?
Well, I've had a lot of those. I've had a lot of best days. But the one that comes to mind right now is something that happened recently on a Zoom, because I never thought that we could have those best days on Zoom. But it is possible because you're looking directly at the person and there's no interruptions. So I have a gift of having somebody trust me, even if I don't know the person well, because I'm sincere in saying that this is confidential, and wherever we go with this is okay. Mm-hmm. So I was working with somebody that I had just met, and somebody very successful. And in the first minute or two, I could feel that he was trusting me enough to tell me something profound. And so I'm going to be a little bit vague because I can't ever reveal this whole story, but this major executive shared with me something that happened to him personally and physically that has changed everything. And it's causing him to go through a major transition. And I just sat with him on Zoom, and I said to him, you don't have to know the answers. This is what transitions are like. The questions are more important. And I just sat with him, and he hadn't talked with anyone else about it. And so I hope I have the opportunity to continue working with him on it. This was the first time I had met him. And so that to me is thrilling, that somebody will trust me with something that is going to change everything for them in the first couple of minutes of the conversation. And it was on Zoom. It's quite remarkable.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. What are some tools you might have in your executive coach tool bag that you regularly use in your practice?
Well, it's not an intellectual tool. I had those when I started, and it's not that I don't have them anymore. I spent a lot of years doing strategy work and change management and business process reengineering. But now all of that it's kind of like the circle that around something that is very profound inside, which is to listen and be quiet and be with the person and not have any distractions, and feel what the person is feeling. Because if I do that, then what I have found is that in an hour, I can get to a place where I can help a person turn the key to doing something that they want to do that they couldn't before. And that, earlier in my career, I would have to spend a lot more time learning all the facts. And it's not so much about the facts. It's about calming down and listening and having the person trust me to tell me what's really on their mind and on their heart. And then I can figure out how to ask I don't mean, this is not in a manipulative way. I can ask the showstopper question that will change everything. And that's much better for me than an intellectual tool.
We've talked thus far about success. Can you share with us a valuable failure that you've had in coaching that has been a valuable lesson to you?
Sure. It happened at the beginning of this pandemic, when I said to myself, I'm going to make it my mission to get everybody through this. And I've had 40 clients when I started. And I found that I couldn't get everybody through it because there were some people who weren't well capitalized enough. They didn't have the fortitude or the belief that they could surmount all these difficulties. So I've lost about 6 of the 40, but I've added some new ones. But that profound realization that I can't get everybody through this, not single-handedly, not even if I had a whole team of people working with me, I couldn't, because there are some situations and some people, got stuck early on and couldn't see their way through, and I wasn't able to help them do that. That was a big learning for me. I can't do it with everyone, and that was a downer at first. But now that I've accepted it, I can move on faster. It's kind of relieving too, to realize that okay, I did my best, and we'll move on to the next.
We have talked a little bit about some of the changes in COVID. I think the coaching industry is changing as well. Can you share with us how you see the coaching industry changing and where it might be heading?
I think that the coaching industry may be a little too focused on certain techniques and tools from the past. And things are changing so fast. Time means something else now. And if we don't help people first with what they're in the most pain about, like the COVID relief, I mean, it's number one. It's a part of those, what's that, Maslow's hierarchy. If you don't help people get paid and fed and believe that there will be a tomorrow, then you can't go anywhere else. They're too frightened. So I jettisoned all my speakers that had nothing to do with helping people right now, and I got speakers who could adapt and talk about how to pivot, reinvent, reimagine, how to accept that that's what we have to do.
When you think about delivering great coaching experience, what lessons learned might you have of what works, or what have you attempted that doesn't work?
For some coaches, spreadsheets and tools, techniques work. And that's what I used to use in the early days of my coaching. I had a lot of techniques and exercises and things that I got from other people. And those no longer work for me because they don't get the enormous change that comes from a person realizing that they can do something they never thought they could do. That opening of a door to another world, which I experienced in my own life when I was in my 30s. Something was going on that was life-changing, and when I got on the other side of it, I felt like I was in the Wizard of Oz, when the movie turns from black and white into Technicolor. That's what it felt like to me. And that's what it feels like today when I'm helping someone and they're walking from black and white into Technicolor and they realize there's all these other possibilities. And I don't think you get that from a spreadsheet or a tool that other people are using. I think it's more a realization that comes from the inside. And that's why it's so important to sit with someone and feel what's going on inside them. And if it requires a change, find the secret to help them turn that key.
As you look back over your career, can you attribute a single experience, an attribute or skill that has made you a difference maker in the coaching industry today?
I think it's my empathy. There are very few people that I've been with that I haven't been able to feel a connection with. If I don't feel that, then they're not for me. But if I can feel that connection and find what I have to work with and how to work with that person. I've been editing my life for the last 15 years, and I only take on people that I feel I can do that with, where the person is going to listen and work with me, and where I have a trust and the feel, I have something with that person that I know I can work with.
I love your phrase, I have been editing my life. Tell me what things you've been editing in your life to make it the life that you want.
I believe that in the second half of life, which I'm in, that we have the right and we're here in the second half to find what gives us joy and follow that. And we can jettison the things that don't bring us joy and spend less time with the people that don't serve us well and don't bring us joy. And this doesn't mean conflict. I don't have conflict with people that I just move away from things that are not right for me, that don't bring me joy. If I sense in a first meeting that someone's going to be high maintenance for me, I will say, you know what, I think so-and-so can help you more with that.
I've used that same tactic.
I learned how to do that, and it's wonderful. And the other thing is, you may have known Pat Hyndman as I did. I didn't know him well.
Not as you did, but I knew him. I
didn't know him well, but he was my role model. And he was 95 when we honored him at a Vistage conference. And he bounded up to the stage. He was a little guy. And he bounded up to the stage like he was 45 and he was 95. And he got to the podium and he said, people don't grow old. They get old when they stop growing. And I never forgot that. And he was chairing, he was coaching until he died at 98. And he's my role model, Pat. So I think the second half of life is wonderful. And if we live that way, it's full of joy, and that goes with the editing.
That you brought a memory I had of Pat Hyndman. For those who have not met him or had him in their life, he was a treasure. I can remember being at the Vistage Foundation's 6, what we used to call their chair academy. And he came in and he just had this way. And at that time, I think he was probably 93 perhaps, and was still actively coaching, but he was just so sage. Every word he had, it was just wisdom. And I'm like, wow, this is crazy how wise this person is. But anyway, one of the new coaches came up with a strategy. We were doing role play, and they asked Pat, what do you think of this method? And Pat said, well, it could work, but in my 63 years of coaching, it has never worked. And we just laughed and laughed. And
that sounds like
what a treasure. So to be open to the possibility, but to still have the wisdom there to share.
He was at, you remember Craig Kramer's, who taught us CEO tools. So Pat was sitting in the back of the room when Craig was teaching CEO tools, and Pat was already, he was past 90, and he's sitting there learning with everybody else, and he raised his hand and he said, I'm just gonna try that last thing that you said. And somebody else turned around and said, Pat, you can't just dip your toe in the water. You got to go whole hog. He said, okay. And he said he would try the whole thing.
Yeah, that's great. He was amazing and definitely a legend for many. I have a question for you. Clayton Christensen passed away not so long ago. Prior to leaving, he wrote a book called How Will You Measure Your Life? How will you measure your life?
I will measure my life not only by how I helped other people, but how I had the best life possible for myself. Even during this period, during the pandemic, I'm learning a lot. And I'm spending my time with my little Yorkie who's right here with me. And I'm slowing down and catching things that I did not catch before. So I think there's getting something about every time, even the most difficult times, is important to me. And I'll measure by my life by how I use the most difficult times to get better, to grow from it.
Difficult times can indeed be a gift. So if we can think that way, it's wonderful. So thinking about young people or old people, whoever that may be thinking, I'd like to pivot my career into executive coaching, what advice would you have for them?
From my own experience, I'd say it's very important to be able to listen to people, and sometimes their stories are very hard to take in, some very difficult stories, and help them without letting it destroy you. And when I started this, I wasn't able to do that. I was getting kind of bowled over, really affected by the things that people were telling me. And I didn't know how to channel my empathy in a healthier way. And so I was with a group of chairs and I was talking about it. And somebody said, Norma, can you just imagine being in reality, hearing and seeing everything with the other person, but not letting it deliver a gut punch? So, and another person said to me, added to that and said, can you just imagine a transparent membrane around yourself where you can see and hear everything, but there's some protection where something is you can hear it, but it's not piercing my gut. It's like a buffer zone between me and the other person. I have all my empathy and I'm listening, I'm feeling it, but I'm not having it deliver a gut punch, so I'm disabled. And if I hadn't learned how to do that, I don't think I could be doing everything I'm doing, because I'm hearing some pretty difficult stories these days.
If you were able to go back with all your wisdom today in coaching and talk to your young self as you started coaching, what knowledge or wisdom would you want to pass to your young self that would give you that much more head start for life in coaching?
That's a good question. I would say follow my own gut and intuition more, and don't be afraid of that. Because when I was learning a lot of techniques in the beginning, I had my own ideas about it, but I didn't use them. I felt compelled to do what people were teaching me without adding my own self, who I am. And it took me decades to figure out that I had a lot to bring to the table. So I'm doing it's kind of unorthodox kind of coaching. to do it the way I do it. And when I had the courage to go with that, I got a lot better. To be myself, I got a lot better. I am bringing things that I don't hear from other people, but that's okay.
Well, clearly, you've got quite an audience that finds your coaching valuable. And I can tell you in our own friendship, I find our friendship highly rewarding to have a chance to work with you. So thank you. What's the question I've not asked you that would tell us more about you?
Last night, I was on the treadmill in our fitness center in my building, and I was watching the space launch, and, it was thrilling. It was 10 minutes, and you saw the first part,
breakaway,
the breakaway, and come back to Earth. And I was thinking that that's a little bit about life, about how we have things that help us soar, and we don't need those anymore. We just go on to something new, and the foundation, is still in our memory, but we don't need that. You know what I mean?
That's a beautiful metaphor.
To Earth. Yeah. There's a lot of beautiful metaphors right now. If we can put aside all of the awful things that are going on, there's some beautiful things about this time. I would say it's what was the most profound thing that happened that made you change?
Please answer that question.
So I was talking a little while ago about the Wizard of Oz and changing from black and white into Technicolor. So something happened in my personal life and in my relationships that was profound. I learned something that I didn't know before. And I didn't realize at the time that I could work with that. I thought it was the end of something, but it was actually the beginning of something. So the details are not important. It's deeply personal. But when I changed my thinking towards how can I work with this, that was when my life opened up into Technicolor, and there was no return because the other side was so beautiful. It's like being over the rainbow. So I'd say that it's when something difficult, when you're going through something difficult, just pause and see what you can do with that would change everything, maybe even for the better.
That's wonderful advice. Thank you, Norma. I've so much enjoyed your time and insights today. You and I have had many conversations, but this is the first that we've decided to record and have it. So I think it will be wonderful for our listeners. So as we kind of crosswalk through your coaching journey, over 45 years, starting in management consulting and then moving into consulting, you really become a difference maker and a difference contributor in the lives of those you're around. I took some notes while we were going through, and a couple of things just stuck out at me. One of your comments today was, the question is the most important thing. And in terms of just thinking and understanding what's going on, I thought that was wonderful. You talked about the power of listening, that your superpower was empathy. Your ability to go inside, you described that turtle shell, to pull something in and then come back out. You talked about how the speed of trust, the speed of working and being present was so important right now. You talked about being authentic. You even talked about how you've been leaning into Zoom and have been able to make this, even in these times we can't get together, a way that you can look, experience, feel, create, touch, partner with other people. And I find that all so interesting. I liked, and I really resonated with something you said about, I can't coach everybody. And so as I'm searching to coach individuals, I see who I can relate to. I see who there's a fit. And if I'm not a good fit, I can refer them to another coach. I think that's very important in this process. And as we think about what's important, I just think there's so much joy that we can bring in our own life and others. And I will tell you that empathy is clearly your superpower.
You are a wonderful person. I've so much enjoyed being able to work with you, affiliate with you, and look forward to being great friends for a long, long time.
Me too, Severin.
Oh, thank you. So my guest today has been Norma Rosenberg. She's an executive coach at the Vistage Chair, who operates out of New York City. On the screen, you'll see the location of how to reach her, both by email. You can also reach out to her at her LinkedIn profile. With each session of the podcast, I end with a quote for you to ponder. And today I have two quotes that inspire me from Amelia Earhart, a great explorer. She writes, "Some of us have great runways already built for us. If you have one, take off. But if you don't have one, realize it is your responsibility to grab a shovel and build one for yourself and for those who will follow after you." And then my favorite quote of hers, "Never interrupt someone doing something you said couldn't be done." So until next time, be your best self, seek to uplift others, be good, and do good. You have been listening to Severin Sorensen and the Arete Coach Podcast, where we explore excellence and the art and science of executive coaching today.